candidates were nominated in the Kisoro woman MP by-election, but the faction in Katonga opted to rally behind the NUP candidate. We'll be looking into all these and more, including the electoral reforms and constitutional reforms, electoral reforms and constitutional reforms. Let me introduce my panel this evening. I have an eminent panel of men of substance, politicians and a scholar. Let me begin with a scholar. I have Dr. Yusuf Serunkuma, political analyst. Dr. Yusuf, thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you so much for having me.
I also have the Member of Parliament representing Mukono North, the Honorable Abdallah Kiwanuka. Thank you so much for joining us. Good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening, viewers.
Also with us this evening, I have the Commissioner to Parliament and MP Bukoli County Central, the Honorable Solomon Silwanyi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, and good evening all our viewers.
Let me begin with you, Dr. Yusuf Serunkuma. What do you make of the electoral process in Uganda before we even zero into what is happening in Kisoro? Because in Kisoro we have NRM and NRM leaning, somebody losing the primaries defies the party and decides also to get in. That's a very common scenario in Uganda. Is the electoral process really bringing us the leaders we deserve? Can it not go without being tampered with?
No, the leaders we deserve cannot come from an electoral process. They come from huge things such as politics, the different policies that we put in place. I've argued plenty of times that the current crop of parliament we have is a result of the 2005 constitutional reforms, the parliamentary reforms that happened in 2005, when it was decreed, when the amendment, well, I call it a decree, the amendment said that for you to run in any position of electoral politics, you have to resign your job 3 months to nomination, and then you have to run the campaigns another 3 months. So basically, 6 months without a job. And most of the most brilliant people, that's my assumption, the most brilliant, the best people that come out of university enthusiastic to become politicians take public service jobs. They take jobs like here at the NTV. It's not public service, but the rule somehow was interpreted to include members who work in the private sector. So at the end of the day, that legislation locked the best of us out of politics. The best of our community is locked in public service jobs. Because you see, for you to resign your job, 3 months to nomination day, and 3 months of campaigns, unless you've been stealing.
What's the norm in other parts of the world?
Well, politics is a service. You go and stand for the electoral process. If you lose, you go back to your job. Because you're offering to offer a service. It doesn't become, you either have a job or you're standing for office. Because what the amendment made it that you either have a job, if you choose to stand for office, it becomes the job then. So you have to.
I think you have to look it into the context of a Ugandan situation, that people could abuse their office, could misuse it, to take advantage of it, so that they can get elected because of the deficit of integrity in our country.
But if you return to the reason behind the amendment, it was meant to lock one person out of the job to make it difficult for them to stand. This was Chibilige Mayanja was standing. He was member.
So the law was meant to
the law was
to just target block one person.
He was standing for the presidency, when twice he lost and went back to his job. And he tells the story that then Prime Minister Apollo Nsibambi calls him. He said, "But you man, you keep standing and then you go back to Makerere University to work." And he said, "Very soon we'll have a law which will stop you from doing that."
So why can't we see the likes of you go to court?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, challenge that law, and it is expunged.
So
or an attempt to challenge it.
Well, you're stretching it too far for now, and I think I might lose the point. The point I'm saying is that what we have now, the leaders that we have, are a product of that legislation. So that legislation has given us lawyers who work for independent firms. That legislation has given us people who had struggling careers elsewhere, people who have never held any job, but were talking big, because decent people don't want to fight. They want to serve.
How do you start dissecting people to that extent? That because you're in public service and because I don't have a job, then I'm not decent, then I'm not good enough, then I'm not ready to serve?
Well, I'm talking about the parliament you have. I'm sure you've cried about the quota we have in this parliament. But look, you have people who just left university in their 28th, 27th year. Maybe they've just taken a wife. They've just got maybe married. They're now with husbands. And then you demand of them to resign their jobs before to nomination. They don't have money to stand for this because it should be a service. But you say either you have a job or you're standing for office. So the either or is why you end up with unemployed people. You look at the court of parliament. If you did their job before coming to parliament, you find many of them unemployed, many of them close to retirement, many of them, like this is why you have a parliament filled with lawyers. Most of the lawyers, independent firms. Look at them, all those people. Most of them.
What's wrong with a lawyer, an independent firm? What's wrong with an unemployed Ugandan who has his brain to serve and is passionate about the same? Why do you have to tag that the best should actually be maybe in public service? You can actually be a jobless Fernando, but equally good.
Well, it normally follows. You know the rule at Makerere University, it follows that if you get a first-class degree, you're going to be retained as a teaching assistant. If you get a second-class degree, you remember we still are part of the tradition that people, good companies, public service, hired people, they interned at public service institutions. So the best of university products ended up to serve in public service. Now the law, which was inexistent, the law turned things around.
Dr. Serenkuma, are you aware now, unlike in the past, the parliament we have now is full of people who are highly educated? Quite a number, quite a big number.
100%. Like you know, mature age.
Yeah, but highly educated.
I don't disagree, but listen.
Unlike in the past, they are.
We produce many educated people who have never held jobs. They're in parliament. We have many educated people who have been doing independent business, struggling at it. You know the quality. I don't want to name names, but you know the people that we have in the type of legislation we have. Because this is why it became so expensive, because it said, once you resign your job...
So if tomorrow, Dr. Serenkuma, you wake up and you have no job, does that make you less of a man?
Let me finish this. Once you resign your job, it becomes a do or die. You have to fight to get in. You have to take a loan, because there's no other way. This is how it became. It got expensive and expensive and expensive over the years, because it became, I have taken the decision to leave this profession and join politics. So my new job, where I'm supposed to be earning my livelihood, is politics, and I need to earn big.
All right, let me go to your colleague, Honorable Selwani and Abdallah. When you are contesting for office, you're asking for the mandate from the people of Bukoli. Are they really looking into your manifesto, or sometimes they are looking for the Benjamins, for the money?
First of all, there is what Doctor is talking about is not what is real on ground. When you look at the current parliament that we have, I think it is one of the parliaments that Uganda has had with the most educated young group.
He has agreed to that. I put it to him and he
accepted that. Very young group, very vibrant, and does not mean that you assume that everybody who is in politics is a mediocre. No. I will take myself as an example. Right from high school, I was the best. I was in Electoral College, I was the best in A-level. I went to Makerere, I'm a first-class student. Many organizations wanted me. I've worked with international organizations, Action Aid Plan International, many international organizations wanted me, and I worked there. So you just choose a path, like I chose a path to join politics. And this issue of resigning, it is because it gives you time now to go and participate fully. You cannot say that if you don't have a job, then if you resign a job, then you have less quality. I think let's look at it in a more realistic way. The most important thing is the quality that you get in parliament is the same quality with the population. It is not about the money. People talk much about money. We are going to take money, use money, but you can do politics without money.
You know, there are some people.
What is that?
There are some people who.
What is that?
There are some people they know that have had interest and they're passionate to join politics, but because of the money tag, you know, the hundreds of millions, sometimes it even can go for $1 billion, and they decide to stay away.
Why would people, you know, this thing disturbs me so much. Why would you use a lot of money in an election? Why would you go and spend and run, unless you're coming to, because in parliament, a member of parliament is earning a specific amount, like a teacher.
So, are you saying that you don't know that some people have sold their houses, some people are indebted because they put in a lot of money in an election?
I'm aware, but those are wrong decisions. I should not be part of that, really. Why would I, for example, sell my house to go and participate in an election? Why would you go and give people money in order to serve them? I think this is wrong, and this is where we should talk to Ugandans, where we should all agree that this trend should change. Why would you give people money? You want to go and serve them, but you are buying me to go and serve me. You're giving me salt that allow me to go and you're giving me. If you know, to the constitutional amendment to remove the term limits, we are told members of parliament at that level were actually even given a bribe. So if a member of parliament can be given monone, what do you think? This is always the wrong perception. I remember when we were changing the age limit, removing the age limit.
The term limit.
Leave alone term limit. Because I was not in parliament.
Yeah, I'm actually quoting you the term limit.
Yeah, you quoted the term limit, but I'll talk about age limit. People still said members of parliament have been bribed. They were given 200 million, 100 million. This was not right. Sometimes it is true the president can come out and bail members of parliament when they have different issues, but it's just on humanitarian grounds. The President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni sometimes supports NRM members of parliament. He can bail them out, but not as a bribe, not calling them that I'm giving you a bribe. A bribe is something you're given to influence a decision. But if you're given something just as a bailout, I mean, how do you say the bribe? So the 5 million you're talking about, I don't know, was it a bribe?
The entire 5 million.
And how do you say?
Go back and check it. That is written in history.
Yeah, but how do you say
that even members of parliament were?
I was not in parliament that time, but I really don't think it was a bribe.
So, Honorable Abdallah, the issue of money. Your colleague is saying, well, money is never used. The money, he can't use money. But you are a member of parliament. You know that money, the NRM members of parliament, because of the advantage where they are, they have received money. In fact, there is even a budget for people who go through the primaries. That may not be for bribing, but money is so key. What is your take?
It is true in the current Uganda, with the trend in politics currently, it is hard, extremely hard, to go and contest on any position when you are broke. Right from the beginning, you see, even the requirement of 3 million can eliminate many. Because to contest for the presidential, in the presidential elections, in the last elections, you had to first be with 20 million. For members of parliament, you had to pay 3 million. For other councillors, LC5 around 300. In my own constituency, where I had to go on soliciting for candidates to stand in various positions, I had personally to meet that money to go and pay for the candidates to stand. You know that I had to pay for them for posters. I had to facilitate them to move here and there. So you know the trend.
So these are the people whom you think could be good leaders, but they cannot find.
But they cannot
find the 300,000.
And for the people who know what happened and what is happening on ground, they know what I'm talking about. I don't have, actually, even to, you see, people had built, how can I call it? I had built a creek for them who have money that they are the ones who are supposed to be leaders. Even right now, you can see what is happening in Kenya. Most politicians, they are owning helicopters and they can be airlifted from one place to another during campaigns.
So one
in
of the
the current Uganda,
Kenyan politician
unless
Abdallah,
otherwise.
they also happen to be business people. They also have they run businesses who can see.
But you can see the campaigns they are running. The kind of campaigns they are running. In the current Uganda, it is going to be extremely hard when you are broke to go and contest against this commissioner of mine. He cannot mention it here, but it pains a lot. We have gone through such an election. I left a law firm.
Hold on, Abdallah. Are you concealing information?
Yes.
The truth. Is he concealing the truth? Because
I'm telling
you just said he cannot say it.
I'm telling you the truth. I have a law firm where I felt that I was doing fine. I was doing well. But because I wanted to go and serve this country in another capacity, I just found myself leaving my law firm and joined. Where I was going, it was hot. But I was contesting with a person who was a minister, who had each and everything, who had all sorts of money, who has been a minister for 10 years.
But you see,
I don't know whether you understand what
maybe money is not a factor that much, because
that's why you won.
You beat him with an overwhelming result.
It is true.
Yeah, but
I was not at zero. I could facilitate myself to move to the villages. I could facilitate my agents to move from one place to another. I could facilitate them to attend meetings, to enlighten them why we need a change. Because Electoral Commission, which is facilitated to do all these things, doesn't do it. You just find yourself that you have to move an extra mile to do what the government is supposed to do. Under normal circumstances, I don't think that even it would be necessary for me to hire agents to guard my votes. In the current Uganda, if you simply sit back and you wait for that Electoral Commission is impartial, you are in your own game. You have to be extremely vigilant to the extent that even you must be ahead of the Electoral Commission in its own programs. If you are short of that, you are finished.
So did you buy the vote?
I can't say that I bought the vote.
You can say what?
But I used money to facilitate that election to ensure that I come out as a winner.
Because for logistical purposes, money will have to be used.
Definitely must have fuel, but
people have to travel. People have to. You have to have agents because that's a requirement. You'll have to have your message. You'll have to have posters. Probably you'll have to buy airtime on local radio to explain yourself. That is expected.
Exactly. That is what we are talking about. You can compare that statement with the current status of Ugandans, who would be good leaders in the current Uganda, who have no capacity. They have gone to school, they have senior 6, because our viewers must know that the qualification, for example, for the member of parliament, even for the president, is having senior 6. So I think we have so many people who have reached that level and they can manage to become MPs, but do they have the capacity? It is not only enough to say that, yes, I have my senior 6. It is not only enough. Have you tried to make yourself popular? In what capacity? Have you been the person who has been all around with our people, assisting them with in their farms, assisting them maybe to avail them with some clean water? Maybe you have been helping them in the legal aid. Maybe you are a doctor, you have been giving them free health care facilities and what have you. Some extra benefit must be there. Okay,
let me come back to Dr. Serinkoba. How can, if we are to make reforms, how can we ensure that money is not a hindrance, or money is not giving us?
You have not to turn it into a job. You just have to take out the idea of making it a job. But you see, we are following a colonial model. But the colonial model got some of the brightest from the public, from the wananchi, and gave them positions inside the legislative council as a way of bribing them to get them from the public. So they gave them a good life. So you entered the political position, and they gave you a good life, especially the legislature. So you made money. You got a sublife. You became better than the rest of your compatriots. The thing that Honorable Chwanka is describing, you need to understand from where did it come. You can't just say, oh, election is expensive, without asking the question, when did it become expensive?
I want to add on that, because the people were picked, identified by the British colonialists to go into Legico. They were not guys with PhDs like you. They're not lawyers like Abdullah. So you know, most of them were actually teachers grade 3, but they were phenomenal.
But you need to go back. That time we didn't have PhDs. We didn't have those people.
But certificates, teacher grade 3, but they were phenomenal.
I need to describe them as peasant intellectuals. The people who laid, for example, the Wataka movement. The people who led the coffee protests for the cooperatives. Those were peasant intellectuals. And there are so many organic intellectuals in our communities who have not gone through school, but they've been educated by the circumstance which they become of age. So those are the people that were picked and given them bribes. Now, the current regime of politics, which we've had for, I think, for the last 25 years, borrows that model and vulgarizes it and takes it to another level. It equates a political position to a job, not a service, and that is enshrined in law. That if you want to serve in a political office, you are taking a job. So that's the requirement that I described at the very beginning, the requirement that you have to resign your current source of livelihood because you're going to get a new one. And by that, it becomes a life and death issue. Whoever stands has to make sure they win. You see, Honorable Chwanka said he left his law firm where he was doing so well. We need to understand that if you have a law firm, if you go to an electoral cycle and you fail, you can go back to your law firm. You haven't lost your source of livelihood. This is why many lawyers who fail actually don't do bad. They just go back to their law firms and carry on with their lives. Now, for the rest of the wananchi who are good and want to serve, that's a risk too high to take.
I'm just getting information that I'm yet to confirm. However, we understand Akifesi Grace Ngavirano, who lost in the NRM primaries, is in the commanding lead for the by-election in Kisoro. Does this justify that really this vote rigging? Because look, if Ngavirano stays in a commanding lead like she is now, in the next couple of minutes they're going to be declaring her winner. And yet, the entire NRM juggernaut was on the other side. And maybe the money.
That's the fairest election you can ever have in Uganda. This is NRM primaries part 2. You know what I mean? That you've had part 1 where she lost and they have come back to part 2. Now that election is so fair in the sense that the entire juggernaut is going against each other. Right? Before we started this show, I was trying to catch up on the Mogola election, where the family of Sam Kutesa went against the family of Yoweri Museveni. That is one of the fairest elections we ever have in this country, where there's an equal balance of power. There's an equally assured mutual destruction.
The Kagutas and the Kutesas have always hustled for power.
So what you're seeing,
and maybe they were trying to settle the scores of the 1980s.
What you're seeing in Kisoro is one of the fairest elections because this is NN Primary's second going at it.
Gentlemen, hold on to your points because we're going to take a break. On the spot, we'll be right back. Please, I want somebody to confirm in the news.
Where to find a home in a well-organized environment and 24-hour security. A home with a smile of family and laughter of kids. We have everything needed for a home in Mirembe Villas, Chico. A new home awaits you on an interest-free installment of 6 million monthly this new year. Mirembe Villas, Chico. Your future home awaits you.
okimanyi nti waliwo okusosolebwa n'okuboolebwa kw'abaana abazaalibwa ebbali ng'ate si musango gwabwe. Waliwo n'ennaku y'okukula nga tolabanga ku kitaawo.
Ne ŋŋamba maama oli ddala maama wange.
Ate okusuulibwa ku kkubo n'olondebwa ng'okyaliko n'akalira n'ofuna essuubi nga waliwo akututta okukwola kyokka oluvannyuma lw'emyaka 23 n'oboolebwa omulundi ogwokubiri. Wano ku NTV Akawungeezi ne NTV ku ssaawa emu tukuleetedde emboozi ekika kino okuva mu bitundu by'e Lango mu bukiikakkono bwa Uganda okutandika nga 12 Novemba okutuusa nga 17 Novemba 2024. NTV.
Welcome back to 9. Welcome back to On the Spot. Oh my God, I've just come from another engagement. I almost said something else. We now can confirm that the person who lost the primaries of the NRM in Kisoro is coming out the winner. Is now MP-elect in Gavirano. What does that say about our elections, especially our democracy, Dr. Sedunkuma, whereby somebody comes as a member of a party, you lose in the primary, and then you defy the party, you go and stand as an independent, and you win. But sometimes they don't. But many defy the party position after losing the primary, and they still compete.
Now,
what does that tell us about
one of the lies of our time is the lie of multi-party democracy. The lie, it's a beautiful lie we've told ourselves in this country that we are in political parties. We're not in political parties. We still vote for individuals. So in Kisoro specifically, loss during the primaries was, as they said, now they can actually proudly say it, they had been rigged in the primary. As they've said throughout the entire time of the election, they said the primaries were rigged, so they had to stand. Now this time they stood fully aware that we could be rigged again, but we need to work against the rigging machine. So now that they've won, they can actually proudly confirm their victory is testimony that they actually were rigged in the original primary. But the point I want to emphasize is that we are not in multi-party politics. We don't have political parties in this country. The game that we play is we are in political parties. We are still focused on the candidate. What do you give to us? Beyond the wave that we saw in the last election, the 2021 election, where we had a wave sweeping across mostly in the central region, we are still products of the merit-based electoral cycle. Individual merit. So in Kisoro, majority of people believed the independent candidate is likely to, is our person, is more valuable to us than the person endorsed by the political party. Right? And you see, even the entire idea that you lose the primary and still standing as an independent is testament to the fact that we live a lie of party politics. We are not. So their victory is testament of a couple of things. It's a lie of multiple politics, so they can proudly now say they've been rigged in the original primary. And to me, this is the fairest of elections that we can ever have in these countries.
So, Honorable Servanyi, so what do you make of such, that the entire machinery of the NRM party, including the Secretary General and the Chairman and the Electoral Commission head, they all go down in the hills of Kisoro and they are thumped? When the person who has won is crying foul, they have rigged it.
Actually, I have the same thought with the doctor. You see, we don't have multi-party democracy in Uganda. Like I am NRM, but if I do not perform as an individual, you cannot convince the voters to vote you again. You have to do certain things as a person, as an individual, because voters don't look at the party. Voters look at individual merit. Then sometimes the party comes in. So it is very difficult to say that I am not doing anything, I'll be presented as a party candidate and I will win. We are not yet that.
So the strength of the party, how is it gauged?
Parties are weak. in Uganda generally. That is why you see the whole infrastructure of the party can go to Kisoro, then an independent wins. It means that people are looking at an individual, not the party. And most Kisoro is 90% NRM. That is why you saw the NUP candidate getting 0 at polling stations, 2 votes, 3 votes, because Kisoro it was NRM versus NRM.
Is this true, or you just want to get back to that?
That is the truth. And I speak none but the truth, only the truth.
Abdullah, how could you have performed so miserably?
The opposition, they didn't get
in Kisoro.
All what I can state, all what I can say about the Kisoro by-election, first of all, it has exposed the rigging of NRM, which we have been complaining about across in this country, because you can just wonder the so-called mighty party going into its own primaries. They successfully get a person who is a winner, they jubilate. Just few days they line him into an election organized by Electoral Commission, and the same candidate is defeated. It clearly shows that there was rigging. So even in NRM itself, or even within the party systems themselves, they are rigging. The systems are not operational as they are supposed to operate. We have seen this across the country, especially in NRM primaries.
I think
you remember when
you've made a very good point, Abdullah. I think the commissioner should respond to that, because if this is happening in-house, how can we trust you for a general election? This is like a corruption enterprise.
No, I mean, there is, you know...
What happened?
You know what happens in the NRM primaries is that there is no clear system. You know, our primaries, first of all, we don't have the resources. Electoral Commission has a clear funding. But remember, NRM, we are conducting elections at more robust elections at village level. You know, Electoral Commission, the polling stations, they combine villages. But now you find NRM has more polling stations than the Electoral Commission, but there are no resources. That's why you find even before the lining up, we used to write on paper.
What has the lack of resources got to do with integrity?
Lack of, for example, printing ballot papers. You need ballot papers, but you're telling people line up. You know, it becomes... But
I thought lining up is the most sure way of...
No. Lining up has advantages and disadvantages, like intimidation. You find once this person is an opinion leader in the village and he has stood in the line, all the others will shy away and they follow that person. So there are disadvantages. We used to write, before lining up, we used to write on an exercise book, a piece of paper. And Solomon Silwanyi. It would not work.
For a party with 18 million members, like you say, like in power almost 40 years, why are you still incapable of organizing
that shows
an efficient electoral process of your party?
But that shows you the fairness. That shows the fairness, because if NRM would now use government resources to organize the primaries, then it would be very organized, but they are still also gambling. That shows you the fairness. That's why you see the elections, the primaries are not well organized, because it is basically because of resources.
With all respect, it's incompetence, because you should be having the resources by now. You can't run a country for 40 years and a party for 40 years, and you are lacking to run an efficient electoral process at a village level, and you're saying because you don't have resources? You have almost 500 members of parliament.
You cannot say, yes, 500 members of parliament, and they contribute, they give money
to the party.
Yes. According to numerical strength. Yeah. But how much? The party has several activities they are running, several things they are doing. I'm not here as a spokesperson of the NRM party, but what I know is that they are constrained. I always participate in primaries. You find ballot papers have not reached because of the difficult. Look at how much Electoral Commission is using. Billions.
The ballot papers have not reached. When the people are simply lining up.
Look, of course you must have, still, even if people are lining up, you must have the tally sheets.
You say the tally sheet, not the ballot papers.
No, you must have tally sheets. You must have all the resources at the polling station. You must have them. And let me tell you, if this does not happen, because look at how much Electoral Commission uses in an electoral process, and then you compare with the NRM party, we are using about 22 billion.
But
then when you look at Electoral Commission, yes.
The people in Kisoro are not complaining that they didn't have resources for the primaries. Their complaint has been and remains the primaries were rigged. So it wasn't about resources.
Yeah, I was not in Kisoro,
but
so I cannot competently.
But then you can't choose to distract us by saying.
I'm just giving you a general overview, because I cannot competently.
Specific to Kisoro.
I've not followed up the elections. I've not been knowing what is happening so much. I'm not in Kisoro, so I'm just giving a general
specific
overview.
To Kisoro. So the complaint is rigging, and as I said, it's exposure to the inner machine.
But definitely,
okay, let's take it to another level. And Abdullah, I want to come back to you. The president is on record, just recently, having said that NUP, or the opposition, rigged him of 1 million votes. That you ourselves are actually very good at this. 1 million from the president's votes? He's on record having said. Well, what did you make of that?
Before I can state that the allegation is unfounded, baseless, it is not factual. We challenge.
The single most consumer of the intelligence from all sources.
We challenge Mzee Museveni to bring evidence, and if possible, to take us to court, not only in civil, but also to make sure that those people who participated in those illegalities, because it is illegal, they are criminalized and they are taken to court to attain justice. But the other way around, Ugandans had to laugh. They laughed at him. You see, Mr. Museveni is now 8 years. In my religion, we are told a person, by clocking 8 years, he goes back as a child.
Oh.
Yes.
No.
Is that Islam?
I'm telling you.
How old is Trump?
When I'm telling you, in my religion, you can ask any sheikh, you can ask any imam, even the Quran itself, when you grow and grow and grow, you start, God will take you back into that. So I thought that Mr. Museveni has
diminishing returns?
Is diminishing in that direction. I have to be honest about my religion, what is said about people.
I disagree.
Yes, and it is evident. I'm quoting my religion.
The world's strongest economy with the toughest military on the planet is being led by an 82-year-old.
But I have quoted what my religion is telling you. I understand Mr. Museveni is not a Muslim. He could dispute that, but that fact has been there for over 105 years. But what I'm talking about here, but what I'm saying here,
well, I want to agree with you, Abdullah, on one.
As I'm driving,
I want to agree with you, Abdullah, on the issue of age, because he actually said it to me with a lot of clarity that after 75, that is very scientific. You lose some cognitive abilities, and that it is scientific.
Even scientifically proved.
He said it himself.
Thank
Even
you.
when he was not yet at 75.
Solomon
there
Waits.
came new facts.
Solomon Waits.
I don't know if that is the case.
So much as we are putting, you see, in our laws, he who alleges is duty bound to prove. We call upon Mr. Museveni not only to prove, but to make sure that he take us to court to attain justice. On the other way around, it is on record. It is on record. Mr. Museveni himself, using the army, using the commissioners and other presiding officers, they had to deal with the election results. Several police security officers were seen in broad daylight ballot stuffing. These videos actually are still on the website of NTV. Seeing in broad daylight UPDF officers, police officers participating in election rigging. So these people were working for who? These people, personally, personally,
yes,
I won an election. Mr. Museveni, using his son, who was the commander of SFC then, dispatched the SFC. They came at the terror center in Mukono. They put the returning officer at gunpoint, trying to declare the person, the NRM candidate, who had lost miserably at 8,000. Who was trying? I'm trying to prove what exactly happened. You remember the televised broadcast which happened in Kayunga, in the by-election of LC5. What happened? The results, the UPDF had to come in, police had to come in, and the results were overturned.
Okay, Dr. Senkuma, if the president actually is on record having said he was rigged of 1 million votes, but what does that say about the electoral system he's put, the electoral commissioner, and because if he lost that much, then heads should be rolled. The president should say, you know what, let's have a different system. This is not working.
Okay, allow me quickly to pick a point that Honorable Chuanuka made. I think quoting Quran is a source that most listeners are not familiar with. Perhaps Shakespeare will be more familiar. Shakespeare talks about the 7 ages of man, right, which work in a cycle. So the 7 ages when you're born, you're very buoyant and you're very strong, and then later you're without teeth when you clock the 7th age like you were as a child. Right? And evidence for that is not the victory of Donald Trump, but the senility of Joe Biden. He kept losing himself like a child on stage. So that point needed to be recaptured, that, you know, son's teeth, son's wisdom, son's memory. This is Shakespeare talking about the 7 ages of man, which normally work in a cycle. Right? So I think it's a valid point. I think he didn't have to go to the Quran. He would have quoted Shakespeare. He wouldn't have been so much trouble.
As a man of faith, the Quran was more authentic.
It's absolutely authentic. Yes. But I felt his listeners would be unfamiliar with this source, and they think is citing fiction. Yet there's an easier text that many people relate to.
Do you know that there are many people who understand the Quran more than the Shakespearean example you're bringing?
Well, let's not discuss this now. But to the question you asked me, is if for a very long time, Museveni has learned an ugly trick to act like he's a member of the opposition, yet he's in the government. To take on the position of the opposition against himself. His son has actually taken on the trick too. His son is nowadays also, when he talks, he's critical of his father, right? So he's trying to draw a distinction between himself and his father. But Museveni's trick, he does this with his ministers. He appoints them. When they fail, he turns against them. He said, this minister failed me, but he's the president. This is the thing we're witnessing in the KCCA. After the Kitezi tragedy, you know, the people that have been arraigned in court and who have been jailed for some time, these are really serving Mr. Museveni because he appointed them, right? So Museveni turns around, plays opposition, and then he's protected from the background. It's something is the ugly trick is playing with the electoral thing to say, I was rigged. If he were actually rigged, and he has evidence that, the first thing he would do was dismantle the Electoral Commission, because it was rigged by his own Electoral Commission, or which means the Electoral Commission, headed by Justice Byabakama, is incompetent. So he, as the appointing authority, that's the man you throw in jail, or that's the man you take the position away from him, right? But this is, and we normally come back to this game, and we talk about electoral politics, going back to the elections, rigging and being rigged. You know, Patrick, I don't know at what point we will convince ourselves that we are not made for this type of elections. You know, as a country, I don't know, because you see, when we talk about money earlier on in the show, the money that, you know, people who stand for positions have to pay is not money facilitating the election. It's money they're actually paying to voters, buying the votes. Okay, let's look into what kind of reforms, and Honorable Abdallah, I want to start with you, that we really need now, electoral reforms, that you think can bring sanity, can make sure the system we have is full of integrity, is robust and transparent. What would you propose in terms of electoral reforms?
As highlighted, first of all, by Dr. Serunkuma here, I think we need an overhaul at the Electoral Commission. First of all, by Mr. Museveni indicating that he was rigged with 1 million votes, it is a clear vote of no confidence in the Electoral Commission. Because it slept on the job. Where was the Electoral Commission? And what Mr. Museveni did in the opposite, to congratulate them for what they did, participating, because I must have read with the Electoral Commission. He renewed Byabakama's contract. Why? Because they did the job very well for Mr. Museveni. He rewarded them another tenure. Of course, outside the law, because we had anticipated to challenge the circumstance under which he renewed the contract, but that is for another day. As you are asking me what should be done urgently, one, it is not too late to sit down and agree on the kind of electoral commission we have if we are to get a free and fair election. We may not necessarily need to amend the law, but we need all actors on board if we are to get a free and fair election. Even before the election, which is in corner for 2026, we need the army out of elections. If that one is done, other things can come later. The army, at the time of election, we should have one command center, which is the Electoral Commission. Not that we need some support, even where the Electoral Commission does not need support, they will say, no, we were called in to come and give support. And they end up participating and taking sides. We have had generals severally saying that you people, you are joking as far as Mr.
Are presidential election results declared at the district level, or we have to send them to the national level? Because I think there was a proposition they should be declared there and not necessarily sent.
We had proposed all those amendments to be done in the Electoral Commission, in the Electoral Commissions Act, to ensure that as far as parliamentary elections at the district or at the constituency level, those results are declared, to ensure that whatever is transmitted is clearly known, not to simply wait for Electoral Commission, because there is that tendency that much as we have declared, the final word is for Electoral Commission to declare. So if we can get results declared at the constituency for the president in the 200 plus constituencies, at least we can be safer. Maybe, and sure that maybe there could not be rigging. But all in all, we need all parties on board, all stakeholders on board, while constituting Electoral Commission. Because if it is Mr. Museveni himself who is a candidate, who has actually in all these things which we are talking about, it is only Mr. Museveni who has been constant since the inception of the 1995 Constitution. It is only Mr. Museveni who has been constant. In all his governments, even we have had several chairpersons of the Electoral Commission, the Kasujas, the first Akamwai, they all went. And the commissioners, they went. He's still the constant. Okay. He can hire and fire. You can see even recently when he fired the former Secretary General under unclear circumstances, the former Secretary of the Electoral Commission for whatever offenses he committed. So for him, he can hire and fire at any time. It is not surprising that the next morning, you can wake up in the next morning when Mr. Museveni is saying, as far as Byabakama is concerned, I have realized you committed this, you are no longer the chairperson.
Okay, Honorable,
how?
Honorable Abdallah Kiwanuka, Honorable Solomon Selwanyi, and Dr. Yusuf Serunkoma. Gentlemen, we're going to take a break, and the hot seat will be, on the spot, we'll be right back.
Brother might be blind, But for him, football is not just about what we see, but what we feel.
Go and dance. Go and crash. Put up all the verse.
Obadde okimanyi nti waliwo okusosolebwa n'okuboolebwa kw'abaana abazaalibwa ebbali ng'ate si musango gwabwe. Waliwo n'ennaku y'okukula nga tolabanga ku kitaawo.
Ne ŋŋamba maama oli ddala maama wange.
Ate okusuulibwa ku kkubo n'olondebwa ng'okyaliko n'akalira n'ofuna essuubi nga waliwo akututta okukwola kyokka oluvannyuma lw'emyaka 23 n'oboolebwa omulundi ogwokubiri. Wano ku NTV akawungeezi ne NTV ku ssaawa emu tukuleetedde emboozi ekika kino okuva mu bitundu by'e Lango mu bukiikakkono bwa Uganda okutandika nga 12 Novemba okutuusa nga 17 Novemba 2024. NTV.
Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara, and my guests this evening I have Honorable Abdallah Kiwanuka, I have Honorable Solomon Selwanyi, and I have Dr. Yusuf Serunkoma. Doctor, sometimes let's look now into you because you're from the academia. Really, concrete propositions on how the kind of reforms that we need to change the trajectory of our politics, so that the people who get the mandate are those that are deserving, and the system is robust.
So first you need to set the stage for the reforms. The only way you can have reforms, especially as consistent with our current politics, is that the government in office, which has an upper hand over the electoral process, has to understand that those that are not in office are capable of making me lose something. Only people with equal amounts of power negotiate. Only people with equal amount of power sit at the table and say, let's reform the playing field. Now, the more Museveni thinks about people in the opposition as weaklings, as non-entities, as people that he can quickly buy off into joining him, there's no need for reforms. Even when he actually agrees to reforms, he will only agree to those reforms after ensuring that the results will be predetermined, as they often are. In fact, the eminent scholar of law at Makerere University called it a constitutional crisis. We need to go into a moment of crisis. That all of us realize that this thing is costly. Both of us on either side of the aisle are assured of loss, so that we need to talk.
But how can the people right now who probably are underdogs project their power to reach a level so that they can also be on the table for negotiation?
I wrote in the Observer, I think last week, 2 weeks ago, that the opposition in this country has so much power, but they sell it cheaply. The opposition is in a power to actually raise themselves to a level playing field where they can actually negotiate, where M7 realizes that I stand to lose something, but they sell opposition so cheaply. Under a
the reality is Katonga is versing Najanankumbi.
Let me explain this.
Then you find probably Noop with their former leader of opposition, things are not going right. They have spent a lot of time fighting amongst themselves than even thinking uniting and provide strong opposition to the NRM.
Okay, I don't know where to begin because you've said so many interesting things there. So, I mean, the first part I want to say is that those that we call the opposition, they have the possibility, they sit in a very enviable position that if they were to be serious, I know they tend to challenge me, why don't you come and join us and be serious? But if they were to be serious, they're in a position where they need to squeeze Museveni to the point that he realizes, I lose something if I don't talk to them. You see, because oftentimes Museveni has these small bills where the stakes are so high that he runs through Parliament. And there was a moment in Parliament under the previous leader of opposition when Museveni was put in this mode. I'm saying Museveni, but to me, Speaker of Parliament, that the MPs are not returning to Parliament unless they presented whoever was jailed incommunicado. There was a time we had so many members of supporters of the NUP who had been thrown in jail and we didn't know where they were. So under the leadership of Mathias Mpuuga, he said, in agreement with some of them with the opposition, we're not returning to parliament unless all those people supporting our party who have been arrested and kept incommunicado are brought out and we know where they are. And I remember that moment was a moment of so much tension on the part of the system, because we live in a facade of democracy where Mr. Museveni wants to appear democratic. And that's the bargaining chip. Now, you know, as happened, they went back to parliament because I think Mpuuga risked standing alone, because all the other members around him
capitulated.
Yeah, well, there's a bit of sycophants on the part of members of the opposition. They were willing, they were even threatening him, they were willing to just go back to parliament on acquiescing to the tyranny of the machine. But the point I'm making this, Patrick, Museveni hasn't realized that he can lose anything, so that they have to talk. We have to go into a constitutional crisis. You see, I normally go back to 2007 Nairobi in Kenya. That was a tragic moment for Kenya, when there were machetes and burning and the entire country was burning. But that was a good moment for Kenya, because now whoever takes power knows we are assured of mutual destruction if we don't respect ourselves in our political space. Kenya was bad, 2007 was bad, but it was a wonderful moment. We haven't had that moment. I'm not saying we need to have that, but moments like that remind us that we are assured of equal. We can't go back to such. We don't want to go back to it, but somebody here knows I can kill 50 people in Kampala and nothing is going to happen, because those who are opposing me will quickly go back to their small jobs. They'll carry on, life is normal. But the moment you realize this city can burn if we don't go into reforms, then, you know, the thing you're saying is really, you know, barely scratching the surface. And the people.
But you know, in your discussion, you're hovering on a very dangerous precipice.
Well, I'm telling you this.
Of violence, you know that?
Well, Museveni told us countries are built on dead bodies, and that's what he did. He went through a moment of violence to become president. And you see, the gamble we make is the man who came to power through violence, that he'll put in place electoral reforms and then he'll be kicked out of power. We have a man who's been a constant for the last 40 years, and we tend to play these games, electoral reforms, electoral reforms, electoral reforms. But if Museveni ever agrees to reforms, it will only be after he has known that there is equally assured destruction, or when these people, or after realizing that I can manipulate it my way. Those are the only ways he can agree to reforms, because he's likely to, but only after realizing they can manipulate the reform still to my advantage.
Mutually assured destruction, mad, is what can make the chairman move. But do you really think, what do you think about the reforms, Honorable Serwanyi? You've been listening keenly to these two individuals, two colleagues, or you think everything is fine?
I have a wild thought.
Okay. Throw it in.
I was thinking about
it's comfortable.
Having
the status
something,
quo should be maintained.
No. I'm thinking of having something like proportionate representation, where individual members, like members of parliament, like Solomon, you don't present yourself as a candidate in the elections. They vote a party. Then the party with the biggest proportionate percentage takes more members of parliament and chooses.
Actually,
I think that will
there was even an idea of parliamentary democracy.
I think that will clear. It will clear all this hullabaloo, because the truth is that you cannot never have a free and fair election. It will never exist. It does not exist in the United States of America, which is the world-class democracy. It does not exist anywhere and will not. So if we can adopt something like that, we should start thinking outside the box and looking at something that is going to remove money from elections, to remove violence from elections, to remove everything. Talk about proportionate representation. I think it will sort out this. The party will just go to Bukoli and say, for Bukoli, we want so and so, after they have won the mandate of the population. I think that will completely, they will, maybe if Nup wins, they may not choose Abdallah Kiwanuka, they may choose another person. So it be, as long as we are now square one and there is no money in elections and there is peace, no violence, I think we should. I'm thinking wild.
Listening to this man talk, I wanted to add a third layer to my earlier submission. The third layer is the only reform that we really need as a country is people close to Museveni. Museveni's friends. Museveni's close buddies.
Who are those people?
I don't know who they are, but I'm sure they are there because Museveni can't govern alone. Maybe his co-president brother to talk.
What did you just say?
His co-president brother, Salim Saleh.
Is a co-president?
I think so. Do you think Museveni is running this country alone? He has a co-president brother. But let me know, the third layer, the only reform that is feasible is people close to Museveni talking to him and saying we are headed either in the direction of Sudan or in the direction of Somalia. Because these other reforms is window dressing. We are gambling. If people spoke to Museveni and said we need to sit down as a country and chart course for your 80-year-old, you have a son, or the palace is in conflict. You have a son who is trying to prepare him for the presidency, and you have a son-in-law who is also sort of, you know, trying to get his way into the... We need to sit down as a country. This electoral drama is actually handing us to destruction. Okay. We don't need this. The only reform, Mr. Kamara, which I find very feasible, is sitting down and saying, look, Mr. Museveni, you're 80. We know you don't want to lose an election, but we need to talk about this country after you.
You know, Honorable Abdallah Kiwanuka, I can imagine in the mind of President Yoweri Museveni, he looks at the opposition and you're so beatable. He looks at you as people he can beat because he has done it before. He has almost 6 records to show. So there can be nothing in what he's proposing that is going to maybe bring some fear in his heart to say, Abdallah, you know what? Let's come and we talk. Because in his mind you are beatable and he has a record to show.
I'm part of the opposition.
Yes.
And I believe I have not done enough. I'm blaming myself. I think I have not done enough to put Mzee Museveni and his cronies in the corner. Even before elections, to make him sweat plasma and feel that he need to sit as suggested by Dr. Serun Nkrumah here. He cannot do that on a silver platter. He must first feel something. And that's something I haven't done it. I need to drive and put Mr. Museveni in a certain corner, which I believe I haven't done. A mere coming here and mentioning the illegalities he has committed, he's aware that we know. But galvanizing that energy, mobilizing the citizenry, enlightening them. You started by talking about what you people called a wave. People in this region, I don't believe that it is a wave. We took a lot to enlighten them. What we are suffering, it is only that Ugandans who are living in this region happen to know their rights and they know the grievances affecting them, unlike the people in Kisoro. Even the people in Kisoro, in their hospitals, they don't have medicines. Even their roads are even in a worse situation.
But
they don't know.
But they know, I think. They have just defied the system.
At that level, you can appreciate that maybe that candidate, the reasons which led, because this lady was defeated in the last, it was in the last parliament. She was defeated in 2021. She has been mobilizing to come back. She has been thrown back again. There are reasons behind that, but that's notwithstanding. The challenges affecting Ugandans should be a unifying factor to force Mr. Museveni's exit, or to sit down and say enough is enough, because these problems are cutting across. What is affecting me in Mukono are the same problems affecting the people in Luwero, even in Kisoro. We have moved there. Actually, for them, they are even in a, you can think they're in another Uganda. I'm telling you, in Kisoro, it is on the border of Uganda and Rwanda. They have been impoverished. They are, I don't know how to describe them. I think in this region we did as we did, because people are a little bit enlightened. They can listen to the radio, they can watch the TV, and they can also communicate. They are on WhatsApp corresponding with what is happening in Kenya. Unlike the people in Kisoro, you see they are neighboring another dictatorial country. Maybe they are not even allowed to access a bit of information. But we need to do something to put Mr. Museveni in the corner. These things, even if we don't talk about the reforms can come by themselves if Ugandans can accept that now it is high time to take this country back onto our own selves. Because everything was hijacked. The Electoral Commission was hijacked.
But when you say you haven't done enough, and you yourself here admit you haven't done enough, what would you have done? What have you failed to do exactly?
Having appreciated that Mr. Museveni has done some good things, and there are so many anomalies which he has committed and his regime. Transforming those anomalies for Ugandans to know that they caused a regime change in Libya, they caused a regime change in Egypt, they caused a regime change in Kenya, they caused a regime change in Iraq. It is only that which is missing. I might have done it in my own region, because I suppose if the 80 MPs, if everyone can take that mantle into his own constituency and we mobilize jointly, we don't need 100, we don't need 200 MPs. I believe the 80 MPs we have, we can ably mobilize Ugandans, enlighten them about the grievances and why they should. We talk about those ones who have been affected by the lake activities of the activities of the army on the lake, by the unemployment in the country, the nepotism, the high corruption in this regime. Only those things, and we only concentrate on those issues and mobilize Ugandans on those lines. Okay. I believe Mr. Museveni will be no more.
Dr. Serunkuma, civic competence is perhaps a vibrant citizenry. People.
No, it's not about civic competence. You know, we killed political education, which used to be in school. We killed community service. Those are things that were deliberately killed. You know, remember Bulungi Wansi? Every Wednesday, maybe I don't know what day it was for other people, but we met every Wednesday to clean the roads, to clear the wells, to clean the boreholes. That was a moment of civic awareness. So that was removed. We killed the barrier.
And we used to discuss about the issues of governance in the country.
I mean, in schools, in high school, we killed political education. So
which was banned.
So we don't need to have other platforms. If we mean business, we did just go back to those things. But I felt when Honorable Chwanko was speaking that he must have believed so much into my rhetoric of violence and action and doing so much. I worry that, you know, I meant to say that that's the stage where reforms happen. And I don't see Uganda going into that stage. But I need to build this point a bit more, Patrick, the point of talking to Mr. Museveni, right? Because we are destined to the direction of Sudan if we violently try to remove a leader. I've written in the Observer that I don't wish Museveni sudden death. Because if Museveni died suddenly, this country will be thrown into turmoil. Because there are time comes in the life of an autocrat that the country needs him more than he actually needs us. That right now Museveni appears as the only symbolism of our unity because he has killed every other institution, that only him has made the institution. So to wish him sudden removal or sudden death, that would be dangerous. So church leaders, friends, close friends, religious scholars, sheikhs, to sit with Museveni and say, hey, look, this country is going to continue after you. But there are things which need to happen. We need to think about life after you.
But most of the people who mentioned are in public, actually begging for a car, begging for whatever, looking for goodies, for groceries and stuff like that. Are those the kind of people who are going to sit down with him?
They are more authentic than these people, than these MPs. Religious leaders are more authentic than these people. I know they have their problems, but if we are to trust them with our future, I'll trust them more than these people, than these ones. I can't trust them with these ones. So this, but I mentioned so many people. Museveni has friends. Museveni has people who lead him in prayer. When he's inside his house, inside his bedroom, we need to have a conversation as a country, Patrick, reforms which are electoral, because as I said, it's difficult to set the stage for electoral reforms. It's difficult to do that. So we're left with not so many options to sit down and say, you've run your course 40 years.
Oh my God.
He's run his course. How do we then move forward? Because you see, we have reached that, I've said, a time comes in the life of an autocrat that the country needs more than he needs the country. That's what happened to Libya. It was the time of an autocrat that Gaddafi stayed in power for so long that Libya needed him more than needed Libya. Bashir stayed in power for too long that at the point of his removal, Sudan needed him more than needed that country. So we are in that same position, that sudden death, sudden removal portends to danger. That's why this country needs to converse, but the conversation has to begin from inside Museveni's house. Because you see, at present, he's the only institution.
I wish you knew what happened between the brother and the brother-in-law inside that house.
This thing which my brother is talking about, by the way, whoever initiated it to Mr. Museveni, the Bidandi, Salis, they haven't even initiated it before, and where they ended, you know very well.
You know, Dr. Serenkuma, as we're talking about people close, maybe to have a conversation, if it is true, the kind of conversation we hear on social media between the son and the son-in-law, then you're not going to have such a conversation, because I don't think you'll have some people who will sit and talk if using your mouth. But we're running out. If those allegations we hear.
Take the example of opposing Museveni. For the last 40 years, the opposition opposes him. Even they're also preparing for the next electoral cycle to oppose the same man. So if the opposition constantly returns to it with no end in sight, why should his family be talking? And I'm not talking about the vulgarized version. Because look, right now the man is 80. He's wobbly when he walks. He looks fragile. Many of his contemporaries have died. He too, and I'm telling you this, the logic of PLU, they are going around the country preparing for uncertainty. That's the logic of PLU. All these things look so visible now to the man himself and to those around him. There is no better time to talk than now.
Okay. At least you're talking about talking. We are running out of time. Let me begin with you, Honorable Abdallah Kiwanuka, with your concluding remark.
Well, what I can state in summary, yes, we need a peaceful transfer of power, and that could only be by an election. I only have to alert Ugandans. Yes, we have a problem and we have a very big challenge in this country where we need to test on the transfer of power, and that's the only yearning for to go into an election. But where it becomes impossible, when it became impossible in 1980, Mr. Museveni had to resort to violence. When it became impossible, when Obote had turned himself into another dictator in the 60s and early 70s, Amin had to use a coup. When it became impossible to remove Omar el-Bashir, people went on the street. I'm showing you all these avenues to know that if you cannot do what Mr. Museveni did, or you cannot do what Amin did, there's that civil disobedience which is lawful under our constitution. Because you cannot be suppressed to the marrow and you continue subjecting yourself into the same election. We are going to this election, not necessarily that we want to win and become MPs. This is the only opportunity which we think that Ugandans happen to widen their eyes, think broader, and they take interest into the affairs of their own country. Maybe through that, we can cause a change. But we don't want to go
Well,
the Sudan
I hope you
way.
know you've done all that, you walk to work, 4GC, all the kind of stuff, and the results have not
Especially at that point when you feel that at least you are tired.
All right.
That is the very moment
Thank you,
when you
Honorable
should,
Abdallah
you should get
Kiwanuka.
galvanized.
Honorable Silwanyi, your concluding remark.
Yeah, I want to thank Ugandans and all the viewers. All what we are talking about is sorted out in our constitution. We have a constitution. When you talk about seating, to talk about who takes over power next, I mean, this is sorted out in the constitution. The constitution is very clear what will be done in case there will be an election. So all these matters are sorted out, and as we move towards 2026 elections, we are going to have a presentation by the Minister for Constitutional Affairs in Parliament of the different electoral reforms, and also the Honorable Matthias Mpuga has brought a private member's bill that is already in the record of Parliament, and we are going to discuss the different amendments, the Deputy President, all those issues that he has brought. We are going to discuss them, and we shall come up with a conclusion in Parliament. So I think we shall get something good and robust that is good for Ugandans in the next.
Okay, at least they are thinking about reforms, and members of Parliament are proposing some reforms. Dr. Sirunkuma, your parting shot.
Electoral reforms are not... I struggle to understand the question that electoral reforms seeks to answer. And my suggestion is that when we talk electoral reform, when we talk reforms, our reforms ought not to be electoral. Because the idea is that if there are electoral reforms, then perhaps Museveni will be voted out of office. And I think that's absolutely daydreaming. A man who came to power through the barrel of the gun, there's no way at a point in time you will say, we need electoral reforms to kick him out of office. The best reform is how do we have a national conversation. The concerns of the ordinary Ugandan, Patrick, the pains of the Ugandan, unemployment, public health, public infrastructure, the answer is not electoral. The concerns of the ordinary Ugandan, the very dangerous banking regime in which we operate, the very humongous fares we pay for electricity, the humongous fares we pay for telecommunication, the things that trouble the ordinary businessman in downtown Kampala, the answer is not electoral. The answer is this country coming together and first of all talking to Mr.
Remember there was a proposition of a national dialogue?
But not the way they were going about it. Because you see, again, to have a dialogue is when the different parties have assured each other that we don't talk. Right now, I'm not talking about the national dialogue. I'm talking about talking to Museveni to say you've had a good run, 40 years is good in the back. Let's now think about how do you get us that this country can have a conversation without you as one of the contending parties.
Dr. Yusuf Serunkuma, political analyst, I want to thank you so much. Honorable Solomon Silwanyi, thank you so much. And Honorable Abdallah Kiwanuka. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for the time, for your submission that you've given us, and for having honored the invitation to be here. But most of all, you, the viewer, I want to thank you for the privilege of your company. Good night, and God bless you, God. You want to talk him to